Hello, welcome and croeso to the Wales Online Labour Leadership Debate. The contest to replace Mark Drakeford as Wales First Minister and Labour leader is well underway, and tonight we're joined by the two people who want to replace him. Voting is open and closes on March 14th, and with the result will be announced 2 days later on March 16th, which we'll be bringing you live here on Wales Online. We're joined tonight by Vaughan Gething. He's the current Economy Minister in the Welsh Government and the MS for Cardiff South and Penarth. He was previously the Health Minister. We're also joined by Jeremy Miles, who's the current MS for Neath. He's the Education Minister and he was previously the Brexit Minister. Tonight, we're going to be putting your questions to them. So thank you to everyone who sent your questions in. There has been hundreds. We've whittled them down. So I'm sorry if yours isn't one of the ones that we'll be putting to them. I hope we have a good range of topics for them both, though. So we're going to kick off, first of all, with opening statements by both candidates. Vaughan's going to go first, and he's got a minute to introduce himself and tell you what he's all about.
Well, diolch yn fawr. Noswaith a diolch am ymuno. Good evening, and thank you all for tuning in. In a few weeks, we will have a new First Minister. Our Welsh Labour family have a big decision to make. Who can lead Welsh Labour and Wales to the challenges that lie ahead? I believe that I'm the best candidate to meet those challenges. I have the experience, the values and the vision required to lead Welsh Labour into a must-win general election and to lead Wales into a brighter, better future. We'd be making history too. No black person has ever led a European nation. Our nation, Wales, would be blazing a trail. Together, we can take Wales through these tough times and into the future, working in partnership with a future UK Labour government. I ask for your support to do that. Dros Gymru, dros Lafur, dros chi. For Wales, for Labour, for you. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Ruth.
Thank you, Vaughan. And over to Jeremy, please.
Diolch, Ruth, a diolch am y cyfle I siarad yma heno. I'm incredibly proud to be standing to be the next Welsh Labour leader and First Minister. I'm humbled by the support that I've received from across our party and our wider Labour movement. This contest is about Wales's future, dyfodol Cymru. It's about what we can all do collectively to build a better Wales for everyone. So this contest is not about any one individual, it's about us all. And it's not about our past, it's about our future. And there are big challenges ahead, not least huge budget pressures, the result of 14 years of Tory-imposed austerity. People are desperate for hope, and I have a vision, ideas, but also a plan for how we can deliver that hope so that we put ourselves in the best position to flourish in the future. I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you both. Can we kick off with our first question, please? So this is about Senedd expansion. Vaughan, you'll be answering first. How can you justify expanding the Senedd while councils and the NHS are expected to make such drastic cuts to plug the financial black hole?
It's a good question because it highlights two different things, I think, and it also highlights some of the challenges of honesty in politics. So we have a big financial challenge right now. That is because of 14 years of Tory austerity. Our budgets have been cut to the bone. There are terrible choices that ministers have to make to balance a budget. Senedd reform is about the future. None of the money that we'll spend in the future will actually do anything to deal with the current financial challenges we have now. What it will do is mean we have a Senedd fit for purpose. With our current responsibilities, we already creak at the edges. And I can say that as a minister, when it comes to scrutiny, there should be more of it, but also how we exercise our power to make a real difference for Wales. I believe Senedd reform will allow us to do that, and actually doing something about getting rid of the Tories, which I believe I'm best placed to do, is the most important thing to do to get the resources we need for public services and indeed for investing in the future of our economy.
Thanks, and Jeremy?
Well, people in Wales deserve the best parliamentary representation and the best government, and the challenges that we've got in the years ahead are considerable. So we need to make sure that our national parliament brings the best ideas, the most creativity, the ability to think outside the box, and that needs more people with a range of different experiences being part of that national democracy, part of how we respond to those challenges in the years ahead, but also take advantage of some of those important opportunities. I think having a expanded Senedd means we'll be better able to make better decisions in the future, and the Senedd will be able to hold the government to account more than it can today. The costs of expanding the Senedd are costs which will be in the next Senedd term. The challenges which we have this year and next year aren't going to be solved by the funding, by the question of the budget for the Senedd expansion. But at the end of the day, it's about making sure democracy in Wales works for the people of Wales, and expanding the Senedd, making sure we have a Senedd representative of all parts of modern Wales is crucial to that.
Thanks both. This is a question from Twitter, from Bryn. When are you going to rescind the ridiculous blanket 20-mile-an-hour rule? Jeremy first, please.
Well, it's not a blanket 20-mile-an-hour rule, of course, but it is a default speed limit. And I think it's really important to bear in mind why the policy is introduced. It's there to make our roads safer. And most people will agree that by schools, hospitals, shops, residential areas, it's really important. What clearly hasn't happened is people feeling that they've been able to express a view on roads near them which are 20, where they feel might have been 30. By the way, there are lots of people who feel that the road should have been 20 when they've not been. So what I've said is that if I become First Minister, I'll take forward the next stage of the review that's already underway, so that we look at whether better guidance is needed for councils as they make decisions right across Wales, but also an opportunity for people to feed into that process and share with us their views on roads in their neighbourhoods that they know well, and we will take that into account. It's really important, as well as having the right policy, that people understand why it's in place and have an opportunity to shape that as well.
Thanks. Vaughan, over to you.
Thank you. And this is an important question because it comes up everywhere you go across Wales. Everyone's heard of the new 20-mile-an-hour approach and everyone's got a view on it. In every constituency where I've knocked doors, I have found consistently that people don't want to scrap the whole approach. What they want to do is to be heard. They want to see some reform around it. So they're very clear that where there are lots of houses, they want to see the speed limits reduced, as we have done. They're also clear they want them to take place outside care centres, nurseries, schools and healthcare facilities. The challenge is connecting roads between settlements and that go through some of them, but also where there appear to be multiple speed changes in a very short stretch of road. That's why I agree we should have a review of the guidance to make sure that local authorities understand the same test they're being asked to meet, but crucially that we listen to what the public have to say on the roads they walk on, they cycle on, they drive their cars on, to understand how we could make changes, because that's what the public are asking us to do. To listen, not lecture, and then to do something about what they're told. And it matters to me because I have a 9-year-old son who rides a bike on the streets where we live. I want to know he's a lot less likely to get hit or a lot more likely to get up if that did happen. So I want a policy that works, which is actually where the great majority of people of Wales are. And I think we can achieve that in the future.
So just to be absolutely clear, in a word, Jeremy, will you scrap the law?
I'm not looking to change the 20-mile-an-hour default speed limit. It's about reviewing that, making sure the implementation of it works well and has reflected local understanding and local experience as well. That's what I'm proposing, and I'll get that underway as soon as I'm elected First Minister, if I am.
Fab. And Vaughan, in as few words as you can.
No, not scrapping the 20-mile-an-hour approach. It's about what we do, how we do it, and frankly, how we listen to the public to show that we're prepared to change on something where we have to acknowledge from the government's point of view, we haven't got everything right. Now we've talked and listened to the public so far.
Thank you both. Sticking with roads, with you first, Vaughan, please. Will you build the M4 Relief Road?
The M4 Relief Road isn't going to happen. Look, and let's just be really clear about that up front. You know, the plans that were there 5 to 6 years ago, there isn't the money to do that. And if you wanted to do that right now, you have to go through the whole design process, all of the environmental studies as well. And there are real environmental challenges around wanting to do anything in that area. So there are environmental reasons not to go ahead with it, but there are clear cost reasons as well. We also have a plan that we are trying to implement to deliver improvements in how the road network works, but also crucially public transport as well. One of those key nodes of public transport that should happen is in my constituency. The Cardiff Parkway proposal is in the east end of my constituency, so I'm not neutral on it because I can't be anyway. That's one of the key things that we want to do in the plan that something called the Burns Commission developed to try to make sure we have real improvements. That should be good both for developing business, but crucially for dealing with some of the air pollution challenges we have. Again, a number of which are in my constituency and others around Wales as well. So a grown-up, common sense approach can help us to grow the economy sustainably and not draw us back into an argument that has already been and gone, but to do what we said we would do and improve public transport as part of the way forward.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Look, people understandably want a solution to the pressure on the M4. But for me, the reason for not building the relief road isn't about the money. It's about the fact that we have a better plan. The plan to the relief road proposals were very damaging environmentally. And actually what we have now is a much better set of alternatives, which the Commission has given us. And that's a mix of public transport, but also extending rail infrastructure. And it's a really positive plan for how we can improve the transport infrastructure that we have, take the pressure off the M4 and support public transport and other transport in the Newport area. What we need to do now is move forward with those plans as quickly as we can so people start to feel the benefits of that alternative. And I'm confident that when we can deliver that alternative plan, people will then understand why the relief road is not the right way forward.
Thank you both. That's a no from both there on relief roads. Our next question is very topical. It's about farming. So why are you, being the Welsh Government, insisting that all farms in Wales should plant woodland on 10% of your land when the priority should be producing quality, sustainable and environmentally friendly food? Jeremy, to you first, please.
Well, it is really important that farmers are able to be on the land producing food for the nation. That's a crucial aspect of Welsh life and crucial contribution that farming makes to Welsh life. But we also need to make sure that the farming sector, like all parts of our economy and our society, is sustainable into the future, sustainable from the point of view of the climate emergency and the nature emergency. So that's what we are trying to put in place through this policy, one which addresses the need for us to have that important source of food in Wales, but also a sustainable sector into the future. And farmers also want to make sure that the agriculture sector is sustainable as well. We're working with lots of them about how we can achieve those two outcomes. There's a consultation underway, and obviously what we need to do is make sure that we continue to speak to and listen to what we are being told. And there is more flexibility in the proposals than may appear, and I think we need to have that ongoing discussion with farmers. But it's really important. This is public money. The government is entitled to set conditions on how it is spent, and it is really important that we have a government which is committed to leadership in our response to both the climate and nature emergencies, and we want to do that with farmers, with the agriculture sector.
Thank you. Same question, please, Vaughan.
So I think it's a really important commitment that we have got in how land is managed in the future, that the first priority for agriculture is how we do produce quality, sustainable and environmentally friendly food. It's the first one of our priorities. We need to do that in a way that actually manages to do so and to think about the environmental balance we want to strike. Farmers themselves understand this already. They can see that the climate is changing around us. That affects what they're able to do. And I think most farmers take very seriously their responsibility for the stewardship of the land, the environment, and the countryside that we see around us. And I grew up in a rural community. I spent lots of times on farms as a child with my father, who was a rural vet. So I understand how farmers do care about what they do in and for the land. But every sector of life, public services and every sector of the economy needs to be part of what we do to actually meet the climate and the nature emergencies that we all recognise are taking place. That's why there is already flexibility in the proposals. It isn't a blanket 10% of woodland on every single farm. It's about having a consultation about how we meet the objectives that we're trying to set. Because when I sat down with farmers in Newtown, with Jeremy as well, we had a conversation with 5 of them that was actually both robust but also reasonable as well, in understanding the different challenges we need to meet. There are 2 weeks left in the consultation. Everyone who can should take part, and not to tell us what they might not like about the proposals, but to think about how they can be improved. The government will then listen and have to work with farmers and their representatives and decide what we do collectively in the future.
Thanks. Here's a question I want to ask. Between the backlash to 20 miles an hour, Senedd reform, the relief road, and now the farm protests, does it not show that your government isn't actually delivering the things that people in Wales want, rather than the things that you've decided are the things that people on the streets actually want? Vaughan?
Well, there's a challenge here, isn't there? Because in politics, you need to listen to the public. You've got to show that you serve the public, but your job is to lead on a number of issues as well. On each of these issues, there's more than one view. On 20 mile an hour, set out what we think we need to do. On Senedd reform, there has been a long run of independent reports making clear that the Senedd needs to be improved to do the job we need to for the people of Wales. And on the relief road, the facts have changed. We've got a plan that we're trying to deliver. So on each of these issues, I think it does show you've got to be prepared to listen. How you communicate as a government really matters, but you can never escape your responsibility to make choices. And because of the budget window we've got, because of 14 years of austerity, these choices are harder and harder and harder. But actually, across the wider public, if you look at the way the public feel about Welsh Labour, it's actually still a very positive picture. I'm keen to use the moment of renewal that this contest presents to bring forward not just the experience that I have, but actually a moment to regather the ambition that we have for the future, to resolve some of these difficult issues and actually paint a much better and brighter future that I think working in partnership with the UK Labour government will allow us to deliver.
Thanks, Vaughan. Same to you, please, Jeremy.
Well, Vaughan talks about experience, and I'm glad he does that, because I think some of these challenges and some of the challenges that we face in the years ahead obviously needs political experience, but it also needs the ability to draw on experience outside politics and to think outside the box on some of these. I actually think that Senedd reform is an opportunity to make sure a wider range of opinions are reflected in our national parliament, and I think that's important as we grapple with some of these bigger challenges. But I think if you look at 20 miles an hour, if you look at the relief road, if you look at agriculture, what we see here is a country bringing about significant change, and that is always difficult. Crucial to do that by bringing people with you as far as you possibly can. And I think I've got a reputation as a minister for someone who has a clear sense of direction, knows his own mind, but listens and is able to bring people with him. And I think that's really important. But 20 miles an hour, the relief road, farm protests, are all about how we can make our country more sustainable in the future. And our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren will not forgive us if we haven't been able to do that. And it is a very challenging journey, and we need to do everything we can to bring people with us. Sometimes the benefits of the change that you bring are seen with hindsight rather than at the time. But I think having that broader debate and having that broader debate in our expanded Senedd is part of the answer to that.
Thank you both. Someone called Tony got in touch and has asked us to share her very personal story with you. She suffered 8 consecutive miscarriages, and the most recent was the last weekend that's just gone. She had to sit in the hospital to get treatment next to women who were having healthy pregnancies or early scans, etc. She can't get the referral to specialists. She can't get referral to England, where she says different services are offered. She's 37, and time is running out for her to have the family that she described as so desperately wanting. Her story is just one of those that people in Wales would share about the NHS letting them down. Your party's been in power here for 25 years. You have both been in government here for a number of years. What do you say to Tony? Can we go to Jeremy first, please?
Well, firstly, I'm very sorry to hear about the experience which Tony has had. It sounds absolutely appalling. I've committed in my manifesto to refocusing our approach to women's health in the NHS. Too much of our diagnostics and too many of the other approaches that we have, and this is common in health services right across the world, don't take full account of the needs of women, women's experiences, women's particular health needs, and we see that from a range of health conditions. So what I want to make sure is that we refocus our approach to women's health, listening to the voices and experiences of women like Tony and others who have not had the experience which they should have in the NHS, and bring that forward as quickly as we possibly can. I also think that, as well as the challenge which the NHS has of funding, and that is real, all our public services need more funding, We also need to help the NHS to adapt to the pressures it's under today and the pressures it will be under for some time. I've got some specific pledges in my manifesto about how we can do that. There is good work happening in the NHS day in, day out to make the experience of patients better, to make it smoother, to get treatment faster, whether that's diagnostics or care pathways. And one of the challenges for us is to identify that good practice and make sure it's spread much more quickly throughout the NHS. And I've got very specific plans in my manifesto for how we can do that. It is about funding, but it's also about helping the NHS to adapt. I've got particular pledges around waiting lists and a particular pledge around women's health.
Thanks, Jeremy. Over to you, Vaughan, please.
Thank you. I'm really sorry to hear about Tony's experience. And the journey through fertility treatment or assistance is actually really challenging. I know this from my personal circle of friends. And there is, I'm afraid, something that Tony's story tells us about areas where the health service can get things right by making small changes. And if you're going to have a conversation about whether or not you've had a miscarriage or what's happened afterwards, the last thing most of those women and or their partners or friends want to see or hear is the sound of other people with their babies as well, because it reinforces what you don't have. So I understand why that's upsetting, and that shouldn't be a difficult thing for our health service to resolve. It shouldn't require lots of money. It's actually thinking about the person in the center of all of this and their experience and how you improve that. And that is how so much health improvement could, should, and is driven across our health service, because we do see lots of improvement that takes place even now with all the challenges. What we need to do better is to do it at a whole system level. Now, I'm very proud to have started off approach to improving women's health with a specific set of resources to deliver a women's health plan. And we started by recognizing some of the challenges that existed in our service around endometriosis, a specific challenge where, frankly, if men had had a male-specific condition with that sort of impact, then the NHS, I think, would have resolved it a long time before. And I'm very pleased that Aline Morgan has taken forward that work, and I've recommitted in my manifesto to invest in a women's health plan as part of a wider approach to improving services and focusing on outcomes as well as waiting times. But you can't get away from resources being the issue here. We need resources, we need reform within a public service. It is possible to do that. We don't need to rush to the market as the Tories did in England. It also means recruitment and retention. That's why I'm so proud of the work that I started as the Health Minister on creating the North Wales Medical School. We'll recruit and retain more of our doctors who are trained here in Wales, and also the steps that I've taken on improving and increasing the training of a wider group of staff from nurses, therapists, midwives and others. And I'm very pleased that Aline Morgan has done that. But the truth is, we need more resources going into health together with social care, and we have to make sure that when we deliver improvement, it is centred around the experience of the person and what matters to them.
Thank you both. The next question is about council tax. England has capped council tax increases at 4.99%. Scotland has frozen council tax for the coming year. But in Wales, some authorities are talking about a 16 to 20% increase in reference to Pembrokeshire there. Why have we not had a cap in Wales? Vaughan, can you answer that first, please?
There are two reasons, I think, to deal and address honestly the question. The starting point is every local authority has its own mandate and has to face its own electors. So every authority that is raising council tax by whatever level will have to go back and justify that to its voters and to explain why it's made its choices. The second reason comes to the point of the comparison that is taking place with England and Scotland. In England, local government has been decimated. Our authorities in Wales have a real challenge. They have a range of demands that don't meet the resources. That's despite the fact that health and local government were the two winners in our budget, with a 3.1% increase in the local government budget. But the real cost of the services that they provide has increased further than that. In England, they know very well that there are real cuts coming in council services, and we're likely to see over this next year more councils in England go bankrupt. And in Scotland, the headline freeze is causing real difficulty. If you go beneath the headlines, there are real ructions between the Scottish government and indeed Scottish local authority who are saying the council tax freeze will actually force them into cutting services because their resources aren't adequate. And that's the choice. you can either say we'll have further cuts in services that people value, and we could have a question on why councils aren't doing more. And actually, it all comes back to their resources. They're long past the time where they can reform and be more innovative to save every service. They're actively deciding how much can they raise council tax, knowing very well there is a cost of living crisis for many people. And at the same time, how far can they go in reducing or removing essential services? It's a dreadful position to be in. It reinforces why we desperately need a UK general election with a different government that is prepared to invest in the future of public services and the future of our economies.
Thank you, Vaughan. Over to you, Jeremy, please.
Well, I'm really consistently for us making sure we provide as much funding as we can possibly afford from the Welsh Government's budget to local government. And the reason for that is that day in, day out, they provide services which are absolutely vital to people right across our society, from social care to schools, a range of other services as well. And people absolutely depend on those. And because of the pressures which the Welsh Government's budget is under as a consequence of inadequate funding from the Tory government in Westminster, we have seen real challenges right across Wales. But as Vaughan says, actually, it may not always feel like this to local authorities in Wales and members of the public, but we have been able to provide quite a lot more funding and protection to local government budgets in Wales, because we're absolutely committed to doing that. And as First Minister, I would absolutely commit to making sure that we provide as much funding as we can possibly afford to our partners in local government. Despite that, we are seeing real pressures right across Wales, and as your question is saying, council tax levels going up, above where any of us would be comfortable. But that is a choice that local authorities need to make to try and balance the income they need to raise, including the money that Welsh Government provides, but also council tax on the one hand, with the costs of providing those services on the other. What we are seeing is the very real effects of 14 years of austerity policies from Westminster, which is affecting the funding available in all parts of the UK for our public services. And that's why we absolutely desperately need to have a government in Westminster able to be a partner to us here in Wales to invest in those public services in ways which then mean that councils would not have to raise their council tax to the levels that we are seeing now.
Thank you both. Our next question is one that relates to the Bury Inlet, but it could be anywhere in Wales, or many places in Wales, should I say. Will either of you prosecute Welsh Water for illegally dumping sewage into the Bury Inlet? Can we start with you, Vaughan, please?
Yeah, I think it depends on whether we've got the powers to prosecute Welsh Water. What we want to see is more action taken when it comes to environmental pollution. I've got clear pledges on this in my manifesto. And I reckon, as you said, Ruth, this could be about a number of places around Wales, around the quality of our watercourses, what that looks like. We both need to see investment in some parts of not just Welsh Water, but a range of other actors that who are potentially responsible for the pollution of watercourses. And we've got to see more effective monitoring. Now, part of the challenge is NRW's role and ability to do that whilst we had 14 years of cuts that have been imposed on Wales. I'd like to see a different settlement in resources so they're both able to be proactive to help people to manage the environment, but also to undertake regulatory enforcement and prosecutions where that's necessary. That's why I've got clear pledges in my manifesto about that. But more than that, there are other sources of pollution as well. It's why we have a difficult conversation around housing and some forms of agriculture as well, to understand what the direct impact of current practices are, how we deliver improvement. And if we can't, we'll find that our waterways will die. I recently met activists around the River Wye. They're desperately concerned that without action, that waterway will be effectively dead. And that is not an inheritance that we should pass on to any of our children. So I'm keen to see that take place. It's why I've got a commitment to introduce a nature positive bill and to make sure that 30% of our land and waterways are actually managed effectively and sustainably into the future. So I've got high ambition on climate, nature, and what all of that means for our waterways. But if it comes to it, I'm certainly not afraid to have prosecutions of anybody, whether it's Welsh Water or someone else, if they breach environmental regulations they're required to meet.
Thank you, and Jeremy, to you.
Look, I've been clear from the start of my campaign that our response to the climate and nature emergencies is at the very heart of all aspects of my policy, and I have a very ambitious set of pledges in my manifesto, but I'll also follow through on those pledges in the actions that I take as First Minister, and as well as ambitious goals in terms of the nature emergency. I will have specific legislation to provide a stronger regulatory framework for our interventions, making sure those regulatory principles are common across all parts of Welsh public services and are capable of being enforced robustly. Where we have those powers, they need to be available to us to use, and that we should not step back from using them if that is the best way of making sure that we prevent pollution. It is really important that we see this as part of a cross-government priority, not simply for one portfolio of the government, but touching on the actions of all parts of the government. So clear legislation, a strong governance framework, principles which apply to all parts of Welsh life, and a willingness to exercise those powers and those regulatory penalties whenever we have no other alternative, and when that's the right way of changing behaviours.
Thank you. Vaughan, we can't not ask you this, really. This week, there's been an awful lot said about donations you've received from someone who was convicted of environmental offences. You've accepted £200,000 towards your campaign. You've said that's within the rules, and you've done everything you need to do in terms of paperwork. But is it not double standards, given everything you've just said there about how strongly you'd go after someone that breached environmental laws?
No, of course, this was a story 5 years ago. But what it really does show is my...
Sorry, Vaughan, I'm going to interrupt. Sorry, Vaughan, I am going to interrupt you there, because the donations have come in the last month or so, haven't they?
The issues you're reporting on in terms of behaviour of the company were reported more than 5 years ago. They took place a decade ago. I'm really clear in my manifesto we're taking a positive approach to wanting to see a climate and nature recovery, a positive approach to new rules and regulations around environmental protection and enforcement. So I have a positive vision on this and so much more in my manifesto. So
sorry, Vaughan, I'm going to interrupt there. You've talked about your manifesto. It's a very specific question. Since December, since this campaign started, you've accepted those donations. Do you see that as double standards?
No. Because my manifesto sets out clearly what I'm going to do. It sets out clearly and positively the approach that I will take to protecting and enhancing the environment. Actually, what all of this shows is that you've got to campaign, you've got to be able to raise funds to do that. I'm proud to be supported by a range of business figures and indeed the 6 largest trade unions affiliated to the party. I have a really positive offer to make to the country. It's set out in my manifesto. It's what I will do if I have the privilege to be the First Minister of Wales.
Thank you. Jeremy, you haven't had the donation from the same person, but we should ask you, would you have taken that donation if you had it from someone convicted of such offences?
Look, it's for each candidate to answer for the decision which they take in the campaign. So I'm not going to comment on that particular context, but I just think, I've got the support in this context of Labour's environment campaign, and I think that is because they recognise that, as well as the pledges I have in my manifesto and the clear commitments I have there, that I'm going to follow through on those, and I think that's really important.
Thanks, Jeremy. The next question is an area of yours that's caused some concern over the last few months and years. The Welsh Government plans to cut the school holidays and change the format of those. That's provoked a lot of criticism from organisations saying that you're not listening and that you're not engaging with them. Are you still committed to that plan? Jeremy, if you can go first.
Well, it is really important to listen and to engage. So the consultation on potential school year reform has just closed and has had a very, very high level of response. And I think that's a really good thing, because we want to hear the voices of people and to get the range of perspectives there is on this. And actually, before the consultation even started, most government policy changes start with the consultation. But in order for me to be sure that I was hearing from everybody, a year or more ago, we started a broader piece of work to listen to what people have thought about the existing arrangement. So I do think it's really important that you have that ongoing dialogue in the way that we've been trying to do in relation to this. And actually, there are views in favour and views against the proposals in the consultation document. What most people will agree on is that they want to make sure that all our young people are getting the best start in life, and that they recognise a long holiday can be detrimental to some of our young people. And what most teachers and teaching assistants will tell you is that the long autumn term can be pretty exhausting for them and for pupils as well. So the proposals are really there to try and respond to those two concerns which have been raised with us. But as I say, there's been a huge response, which is a very positive thing. We'll now look at what those responses tell us, both in favour and against, and then respond in the next few weeks. And that's what I plan to do.
Thanks, Jeremy. Vaughan, are you committed to this plan?
Look, I come at this in perspective from when I first got elected in 2011, before I was a parent. I met schools in my local constituency, and primary school head teachers were almost all in favour of a change in the school year, because the autumn term is such a long one, but also because of the learning loss that takes place in the long summer break. And actually, there's something here about putting the child at the centre of what we do. What is in the best interest of that child, that young person, and how does the school environment, including how the school year is organised, do the best possible thing for them? So I am keen to listen to what teachers and school support staff have to say. I'm keen to listen to what parents have to say and to hear the voice of young people, because many young people don't enjoy the 6-week break that takes place in the summer. There's a challenge around provision, around how families feed and look after their children, particularly our least advantaged families as well. And actually, what we're talking about here is a consultation on moving around the school year. So there wouldn't be any less time in terms of school leave. There wouldn't be any more time in school. It's how it's currently organised. And I think that is a conversation that is well worth having and understanding if we can make a move forward. Because the current school year dates back to a time when the long summer break was to allow children to work on the land. We no longer expect young children to go and work in an agricultural society. What we want to do, though, is to have a school year that is designed around the needs of children, how we take proper account of what that means for, of course, people involved in education, but its wider impact upon the economy as well. So there are important voices to listen to outside the education sector as well. And as has been said, the pre-consultations already taking place has taken account of a number of those views, and people who took part in that were actually positive about what this could mean. But this is all about listening, and then ultimately the government has to make a decision.
That sounds like a watch this space from both of you, and I'm sure people will be. We are coming to our last question, I think. So, Jeremy, if you can answer this one first. The sign of a good leader, Jane Jordan asks, is when they're prepared to make and admit mistakes. Maybe not make mistakes, I think she means admit mistakes. Name a decision you've made as a minister that you would do differently.
Well, I think there's probably, there's a few things probably, if I'm honest. So I think, in terms of the Brexit minister role that I had,
I think we might have lost Jeremy there. Vaughan, do you want to jump in, and hopefully Jeremy's signal will come back?
There's always challenges in what you do. I think I'll give you 2 examples of things I do differently. One is being clear about your expectations for when organisations need to improve. So putting an organisation into something like special measures, as is now, for example, being seen with the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, it's much easier to do that. Much harder to say objectively what improvement looks like. And I think a clearer understanding of what you're trying to achieve would be much better. The second thing is, as health minister, I really wish I'd taken a particular approach to healthcare improvement and how you use money. Often when organisations are asked to save money, there's a central desire to save money because you're often running hot in a big public service. Now, that's entirely understandable, and no one wants to vote for cuts or reductions to the health budget. You can't turn the lights off in A&E for the last week of the year to save the money. People, though, are reluctant to deliver financial savings. You think that's going into the middle, and there's a challenge here in human behaviour terms about how you deliver improvement and how you actually see the benefit of that whilst helping the organisation. So I really do wish that I'd taken an approach where we could have trialled and started. If you deliver real savings, how your service area can keep some of the savings as well as helping centrally, because I think we would have seen a cultural shift in wanting to save money, but also a practical benefit to delivering cost savings to actually deliver into further innovation and improving the service that you work in. I think that sort of approach I'm keen to see trialled as improving outcomes, not just in the health sector, but more broadly, because I think there's something we're going to need to carry on doing, even if we get more resources in the future. I think that's an approach that will work with people to deliver for their whole organisations, as well as the part of the organisation that they work within.
Thanks, Vaughan. I think we're having technical trouble with Jeremy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Vaughan if he can do his closing statement. If somehow we manage to get Jeremy back, if the gremlins go away, then we'll ask him to tell us what his mistake as Brexit Minister was, because I would like to know. And then we'll let him do his closing statement. If we don't hear back from Jeremy, I will ask him what his mistake was, and I will add it into the comments for anyone that is fascinated to hear. So, Vaughan, would you mind doing your closing statement with the proviso that we may well be jumping back to Jeremy when you've finished it? Thank you very much. No problem
at all. Well, thank you, Ruth, and thank you for the questions from Wales Online readers and listeners. As I said at the beginning, voters in this contest are making a hugely important decision. We're choosing a leader to take Wales and Welsh Labour through a high-stakes, high-pressure moment. There is, of course, pressure within this contest, but our next leader, our next First Minister, will need to maintain their Welsh Labour values under much greater pressure. From the pandemic to the crisis facing our steel industry, I've shown that I can meet those demands. And of course, we're choosing a leader to lead Welsh Labour into a must-win general election. An election that people up and down Wales simply cannot afford us to lose. Polls have consistently shown that voters want Welsh Labour to win that election here in Wales, and they've consistently shown that Welsh Labour voters want me to lead us to that win. I have already been tested in the fiercest of heat, and I've proven that my values hold strong. I believe I have the experience, the values, and the vision to lead Welsh Labour into that general election and to lead Wales into a brighter, better future. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, Vaughan. Jeremy, I hope the gremlin's going to stay away ever so slightly. You were part way through. All we heard was, as Brexit Minister, and then it ended. So if you could answer first the question about mistake, and then once you've done that, we'll ask you to go into your closing statement, please.
Okay, how tantalising. Apologies for that. I think the point I was making was, as Brexit Minister, I think I would probably have tried to move our position on the referendum sooner than we did, because it was clear the UK government's deal was not the deal which people in Wales had been promised. But sorry that it got cut out at that crucial moment. Well, we discussed in the last 45 minutes the future of our country and of the Welsh Labour Party, and that's what is at stake in this election. You've heard my vision and about the kind of leadership I would offer our nation and the Labour Party. I'm standing in this election to be the party's next leader and our next First Minister, because I believe I have what it takes to lead and to bring people with me. Mine will be a leadership you can trust, a leadership of principle and of bold ideas, but with a plan to get things done. A leadership which is measured on results, not rhetoric. I will lead, but I will also listen. My vision is hopeful, compassionate, and inclusive. And for me, leadership is about the we, not the I. I'm excited and I'm confident about the path that lies ahead for us as a nation and as a party, but we have to choose that path, and I hope you'll join me on it.
Thank you, Jeremy. There we are. That's it. We've put 11 questions there to you both across a whole load of topics. We've learned a little bit about you both, I hope as well, for those that are meeting you for the first time. And we're really grateful to you both for your time. We're grateful to everyone who sent their questions. And we look forward to reporting back on the result on March 16th. Best of luck, pob luck to you both. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr.